Wonderful. Well, welcome to the organizational meeting of the Joint Fiscal Committee, and I will open by asking if there is a nomination for a chair.
I would like to nominate Senator Kitchell to be chair of the Joint Fiscal Committee for the next 2 years, right, for this biennium.
Is there a second?
I don't know if I'm supposed to second. I'm happy to second if that's appropriate, but more importantly than that, do we have to record this motion?
As a vote?
Yes.
Yes, we do, and that will be, should we do a slate of all of them? Should we ask for the vice chair?
The vote.
Should we do that? Would that make sense to have the slate of the chair, vice chair, and clerk?
Close out nominations for each one before you move on to the next.
But let's maybe record it after the fact with our
Yeah,
members.
Does that work?
Well, it's recorded because we're live.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right, so are there any other nominations for chair?
Well, do you need a second?
I seconded it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, so should we just go ahead and call the vote on this one?
Yes.
Are all those in favor of Senator Mitchell being chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, now I'm wielding the gavel. So our next item is an election, it's a nomination for vice chair.
To nominate representatives.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded for Representative Organizer. Any other nominations? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Representative Organizer as vice chair?
Aye.
And our next, as I didn't hear anyone who did not say aye, but no one is. And the next is the election of our clerk and nomination.
I'd like to nominate Representative Harrison.
Second? Okay, thank you. So we have a motion for Representative Harrison as clerk. Any other nominations? So the motion's been made and seconded. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. All right.
It's your chance.
I decided to vote yay. I was gonna ask about your background in clerking, but
Store clerking or? So now we are organized. We have the election of our 3 officers. Now we'll move to the next item, which is the adoption of committee and office policies. And we have Catherine Benham, who is going to brief us on our policies.
Yes, and you all should have a copy. You received links to this. This is a set of policies that very closely follows what the Joint Fiscal Committee has used in the past. On the table of contents, you can see it talks about, I'll just walk through the table of contents, statute, and it's listed the rules of procedure, which will guide you, which is on page 6. And those have not changed. Then we have policies for us. We have grant acceptance policy, which we'll be hearing more about after we get done with this. And then we have also 3 policies at the very end that are related to political gathering information from political candidates, policy regarding partisan or political requests for assistance, and policy on sexual harassment. And all 3 of those I'm leaving in because there isn't a JLMC policy, but if JLMC adopts a policy, which I expect they will, especially on the prevention of sexual harassment, then that would prevail over these. But they just have not adopted a policy yet, so I thought it was prudent to keep these. I don't know if you have any questions. I would tell you some of the changes were things like the Masons. It refers to Mason chapter numbers, and they need to be updated because the latest edition has slightly different numbers. The right to know statute, we changed it to Public Records Act. Legislative Council was on a couple of the policies before. I think that was pre-JLMC, and we had joint policies where they had their committee was adopted. So we removed them from this policy because you all don't really have any
Jurisdiction.
jurisdiction, thank you, over them. And I guess the final one was there used to be a policy on salaries and benefits, and now JLMC is in charge of those policies, personnel policies.
So those, you summarize the changes.
Those are the changes, yes.
If we approve, what we're doing is approving these policies, recognizing that in several areas that they may be subject to revision based on action by the Legislative National Committee. Any questions, Catherine, regarding the draft and the changes that she's reviewed since they were last adopted? If not, then have a motion to adopt these committee policies.
So moved.
Second by Representative. Any other discussion? If not, then I will call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting these office policies, joint fiscal committee and office policies, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? So, do we have to do a roll on these action items?
You know what, I was just wondering that,
I'm thinking maybe we do.
because you have always done it in the past.
I know.
Okay.
So maybe our new clerk will start clerking. So.
Our clerk always called. the
That's right, that's
roll.
right.
But I'm not sure, I thought that might just be the preference of that clerk.
Oh, well, why don't, we can find out, why don't you do it today? And we will ask legislative council and the Betsy and Mask and John Bloomer about it.
Shall we at least on the adoption of the policies, we'll do a roll call vote for that.
Good practice for me. So what I heard is Senator
Why don't
Sears.
you just, you can take it right off the top and just call by name.
I'm
Restating the
Oh,
motion.
you just
I
doing the
made the
motion.
motion to
Oh,
Yeah,
adopt.
Senator Sears moved that the committee adopt whatever it's
The
called.
draft.
Legislative Joint Fiscal Committee and Office Fiscal Policy.
And the seconded by Representative Lincoln.
Okay, Senator Peru,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Representative Harrison, yes. Representative Lanford,
Yes.
Representative Schy,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Representative Kornheisen.
Yeah.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Wow, that was unanimous. Great job.
Our votes usually. Good way to start.
10-0-0,
Oh, good. We like consensus.
just like our committee,
Yes, right.
our day committee.
Now we're gonna
You
move
know
on
Peter Fagan.
to the draft minutes of the December 14th meeting.
Move the last meeting, please.
Okay, and a second. Okay, so we have a motion made to accept, and what you're seeing is a new format. And we've discovered that to go through and have exhaustive detail when everything is being recorded was, an unnecessary use of hours of staff time. And so they're very different, and they really do what minutes are supposed to do. They're recording the action. If you want more information, then you can see from the minutes that you can actually, it directs you very clearly to where that discussion was. So I just want to point out the new format that we're getting with the minutes.
That's fine, just a clerk question. We have to do a roll call on the minutes.
No.
Good.
So, so I really think, and it took hours of time for that to be done. So we have the motion and it's seconded to approve the minutes of the December 14th meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we're moving on to grants, and obviously grants can be moved much more quickly here in joint fiscal. So our first grant is $5 million.
I think Sorcha was gonna walk you through the grants process first, just a brief discussion about the grants for the new members of the committee.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm moving too fast here. So we're gonna have a brief discussion of the grants and grant process and why we are here and why we have 2 grants to approve. So I'm sorry, I moved too quickly, so
Okay,
that's an overview.
I'm Sorcha Anderson. I'm a senior staff associate with the Joint Fiscal Office. I'm the point person for managing the grant acceptance process once the grants get to the Joint Fiscal Office. I also support Ways and Means. Most of you probably know me in that capacity. So I'm just going to give a really high level overview for what the agencies need to do when they have been awarded a grant. It could be a grant or a land donation or funds for a limited service position before they officially accept whatever the donation is or the grant. They need to go through an approval process. They start by submitting materials to the Department of Finance and Management. They go through their process. They then send it to the 5th floor, ultimately to get the governor's signature. And then after the governor signs it, it will land in my inbox. I'm telling you this because we have a grant spreadsheet on your Joint Fiscal Committee page, and the grants don't show up on there until they land at the Joint Fiscal Office. So if you're heard an announcement or you're looking for a grant, you're not seeing it, feel free to reach out to me. I can do some research and see where it is in the process. Once it does hit my inbox, two methods, the 30-day process and the expedited 7-day process are normally what will happen. So you will get an email from me with a memo describing the grant and the full grant packet. And normally you'll have 30 days to look at it, ask questions. I prefer when you reply to me, if you have questions or you're saying, this looks good to me, usually okay to proceed is the language that is used. Reply all is good. It keeps everybody in mind that we're on the clock for a grant. Direct questions to me, I'll coordinate them and work with the agency to get your answers. This way they're not dealing with emails from 10 different people. And if everything looks good, if I don't hear from you after 30 days, the grant will mature and will be accepted. And I'll send a note to Senator Kitchell and Catherine Benham and the agency and let them know that they're ready to accept the funds. For the 7-day expedited process, that's also allowed statutorily. For that process, I will communicate with the chair of JFC, Senator Kitchell will give her okay to move forward with the 7-day process or not. You'll get an email that clearly states we're in a short time frame. In this case, same process. If you have questions, direct them to me. If the 7 days is up, well, let's say 6 days, I won't let it mature without touching base with you. I know how quickly 7 days can go, so I will email, call, or track you down some way to remind you that I need a response on that grant. And at any point for either of those, any member of JFC can ask that the grant be held for a meeting for whatever reason. If you need the agency to come in and make a presentation, then you have that right to request that, and we'll figure out.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear. So we can do the approval via email.
Yes.
And we do it, and one thing that is just to reinforce, when you reply all, it often is a trigger, oh, I've got to respond. And so you'll see a lot of okay to proceed, and then it triggers, oh, I haven't responded. So the importance of just reply all, not just to Sorcha, is particularly helpful because it kind of serves as a reminder for everyone. But there are times when we will want to actually take up a grant, particularly large grants that might come in, or there are questions. So this is a way, in a very swift way of getting approval, which you can never do through a standard budget process. Representative Lamson.
If there was any circumstances that somebody asked to have it held for a meeting, what does that do to the time clock?
It,
But
it
the
gets
thir-
held until you meet again, even if it goes beyond the
Yeah,
30 days.
Okay.
Yeah, and we, generally, everybody is very interested in accepting money that's coming into the state, so we try to work within that time frame, even when it's held.
And this might sound, some of the grants a little trivial as you read them through, but all of the ARPA funding was a grant, and we had to approve all of it. We met a lot.
We watched.
COVID was busy, yeah.
Other comments? Yes, so if we decide we want to have a meeting to approve a grant, we don't want to go beyond the 30, do we call a special meeting or do we just wait till the next meeting? Or is that decide based on whatever the situation is?
I think it would depend on this time sensitivity, but we can call a special meeting and we have.
Yeah.
Because we can move much more quickly than we could through the committee and the full legislative process. So yes, we can respond quite quickly if needed. The other thing that we, just for you haven't experienced it, sometimes we get something that's expedited that the administration has held on to, but it's like, we're asked to turn this around, within a very short period of time, but it might have been 6 weeks, or, if you look at the date of the request, and by the time it comes from with the governor's signature, it's sent over for Sorcia to log in. There can be a significant time lag there. Is that me or you, David?
That's good.
It's David.
Me?
I think Lenny.
We do actively.
The other day when the alarm went off in the car out back, I was wondering.
It was just a notice that the joint fiscal committee meeting.
During the session, I do try to work with the agencies, or I have been over the past few years that I've been in this role for a few years now, just to encourage them not to request the expedited review during the session, because of how busy everybody is. So hopefully reserving that for more really emergent situations where they're going to lose the funding if it isn't approved right away.
So if it's warranted, we will schedule it.
That all said, other than the ARPA, these usually, there's very few. It's very few.
Other questions or whatever? I look forward to the okay to proceed.
And please, like, if this is new to you, the applications might look strange. I love questions. Like, I'm always learning more about this process as well. So feel free to reach out at any point.
And the next part is, if you raise a question, want more information, Sorcia will coordinate that and then give everybody the answer. So it does avoid that kind of duplication or everybody sort of moving forward. Other comments or questions? And yes,
If I might just, you mentioned at the beginning, but we do have this database, we have this place on our webpage, which we can show you, which has all the grants, and you can, if people are interested, it's sometimes useful to see. And again, the administration is slow sometimes to get stuff to us. People are very anxious, and they're like, why aren't you moving? And we don't have it. So I do that as well.
yeah, we don't have it. We do move pretty quickly.
Yes, we do.
Frankly.
Yeah.
So, all right, so now that we've had, this is me, I think.
So many.
I guess we'll move on now to actually our first grant. And do we have someone from public service? I believe yes. Coming to testify. We have June Tierney and Rob Fish.
They're all in that one. Yeah, these are Rob.
So I think Rob was planning on testifying.
Here he is.
All right, so we have Rob Fish.
Better backdrop. She has sunflowers. He has a cold
And
background.
All right, and is Commissioner Tierney, or is you're the two that are going to be here to present the grant request? Rob, you're the lead buffalo here.
I believe it's the two of us. I'm not 100% sure if June will be joining us or not.
Okay, so do you want to be the first to proceed in terms of this $5 million grant and what it does and why we should approve it?
Sure, I will start, but I'm going to turn most of this over to Alyssa Matthews. She is even more familiar with the entire grant than I am. I am actually Zooming in today from Washington, D.C. at the Department of Commerce, there's a boot camp that's going on of sort of all the different state broadband leaders to do our best to understand and get answers to questions regarding the BEAD program. This is the program that's going to bring over $100 million to the state to help us finish the job. This $5 million grant proposal is the first step in the process. These are the funds that are supposed to ensure that broadband offices have the necessary capacity to be able to develop a plan, or in the case of Vermont, compile existing plans and make them work within the BEAD program. So fully integrating digital equity. It was presented to us mainly as a template of several different buckets that we are supposed to be assigning funds to, that we'll be moving funds around from to meet the changing circumstances as everybody learns more about this program. But I'm going to pass it over to Alyssa right now that can explain a little bit more, or we can just open up with questions. But to sum it up, this is for capacity, this is for contracts, this is for giving us the tools we need to implement the program.
And just one question, this 5 million, the 30 million that we have in our budget adjustment to be the grant match, this 5 million's not part of that 30 million or anything. It's a separate pot of money to help us do the necessary advanced work.
Yes, there are several different programs. The $30 million that's in the budget as the budget adjustment as passed by the House, that is specifically matched for the NTI Middle Mile program. That is an entirely separate program from the larger amount of BEAD funding that is going to be coming to the state later this year, early next year. The timelines are one of the questions we're working to get answers to while we're down in DC.
Okay, all right, good. I just want to make sure the 5 million somehow wasn't or somehow less than the other amount. All right, so Alyssa, do you want to just, add anything more that Rob hasn't in terms of the grant award here?
I think he did a good job of that brief overview. Just to touch a little bit more on, because it is confusing, and so I can understand why. So the Infrastructure Jobs Act has 3 broadband programs that it called out that is being managed by the NTIA, and Vermont plans to participate in all of them. The Middle Mile program was competitive. That's the $30 million match. The other 2, I think of more like they're set up more like what you might be familiar with, like a state block grant program. So they're already kind of allocating them. They have to go to the state, and then the state comes up with the plan of how they're gonna use those funds. And so those 2 programs are the SPEED, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which this is the 5-year planning grant, $5 million for a 5-year planning grant to make sure we have, like Rob said, have everything in place as we move into accept our implementation funding for Vermont over the next year. And then there's also a digital equity program, which we also have a planning grant for, which has already been approved for us to work on.
And just to clarify one thing, I'm not sure if block grant is the correct term. It's not that they're giving us the funds and we can use our existing programs. The great thing about the position Vermont is in right now is our existing programs is what inspired much of this funding that's coming our way. So we will have to make some changes along the way. They're not just writing us a check. It is a very complex process with what could either be considered a lot of uncertainty or a lot of flexibility. From what we're finding out in DC, it appears, and I'm feeling very happy about this now, that it is more about flexibility than uncertainty.
Representative Blanchard.
Sure. Thank you. I've got a question on the 4 positions. Part of this includes the funding for all or part of 4 positions. Are those part of the 4 that already exists within the Community Broadband Board or Authority, or is this an addition to?
Do you want me to take that, Rob?
Go ahead, Alyssa.
So they are already, there is a outreach program coordinator that we currently have a temp program for, and there's also another subset of funds that we are planning for to help us get assistance with some financial planning and budget planning, that we have another position that's already been approved and hired for. So we are going to make some shifts of some of those buckets of funds, but yes, the positions are already approved positions. We haven't filled them all yet.
So let me just back up that 1 second. Like, these are positions that were approved in the big bill last year.
Yeah.
We're shifting some of the funding. We are shifting some of the funding to this pool of money because our goal is to make sure as much money as possible goes towards building infrastructure. There is one position in there, that's the outreach position that we're shifting to. We're going to see you again next month. As we said, we're turning over every stone, and we've been in touch and working with the Northern Borders Regional Commission, and we are expecting the paperwork today of where they're doubling our capacity grant. And that position, this outreach position, is going to be included in that grant.
Okay, so that's clarification, because the information we have and the motion has no reference at all to limited service positions. So it's that's important that actually we've authorized the positions. What the single action we need today is the approval to accept the $5 million grant. Welcome, Commissioner Tierney. We're just going through the grant request and the background and what it's designed to do. I think everyone's talking about the importance and the planning, and certainly $5 million to assist in that work is, I think, going to be particularly beneficial in this very kind of formative stage. Anything else you'd like to add, Commissioner? Otherwise, I'm going to ask committee, do we have any other questions?
I don't have anything to add except thank you for having us in today. I'm here on behalf of Secretary Farnham, who is not well, and he and I both agreed we were probably ornamental here. You've heard what you need to hear from Mr. Fish and Ms. Matthews, but if you have any questions that need to go back to other parts of the administration, that's what I'm here for. Otherwise, it's just to ensure a seamless interface between you folks, the administration, and the BCBB.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about Mr. Farnham. I hope it's nothing.
I am afraid it is.
That's what we're dealing with at the event in DC right now. The top leadership of the BEAD program is out with COVID, and
with it. That's right.
With it. Let's put it that way.
Oh, all right. Committee, yes, Senator Westman.
I'll move the $5 million to the Agency of Administration Public Service Department and the Community Broadband from the National Communications and Information Administration.
I'll second. So, any other comments or discussions? Otherwise, we'll have the clerk call the roll and the motion.
I think what I heard was Senator Westman
Yes.
moves to accept a grant of $5 million
Right here.
to the Agency of Administration, Public Service Department from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration Broadband Equity Access and Deployment
Yes, the BEAD
Program.
program. Yes, and we have a second to the motion.
Yes. Oh,
Representative.
oh, well, okay.
Any other discussion before we have the clerk call the roll?
I just want to highlight, it says ensure service to all unserved and underserved locations.
When we all have,
Well, I'm looking at me,
oh,
as Bob is with us.
I see. And so goes Langro, okay.
Yes.
And whose district would that be in?
I think it's under Campions.
All right, so are you all set?
I'm good.
Call roll.
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Representative Harrison, yes. Representative Blanford,
Yes.
Senator Shy,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes,
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Representative Wood.
Yes.
Well, these aren't all voted on.
No, they are.
Representative Cornwright,
Yeah.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
they are to get to the chair and vice chair.
Yes.
I just figured that out.
Yeah.
And the banner headline is Campion Secures Grant.
Yeah.
Funding.
So full.
Absolutely.
All right. Approved
He's
10-0.
calling them right now.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your conference and.
Thank you.
We'll get funding from all three phases of, the funding source. So,
As I said, hopefully we'll be back to see you often.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on to, the next grant, JFO number 3137, and this is a limited service position. And do we have, anyone tested it? Elizabeth Morrison from Department of Health. Okay. Hello, Elizabeth. Can you hear us all right?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
so if you want to describe what this request is, it's for a limited service position, and then anyone has any questions, have an opportunity to raise them with you. So why don't you proceed with the request?
Okay, thank you. I'm Elizabeth Worsing from the Vermont Department of Health, Division of Environmental Health. Our request to the committee is the health department has been working for the last several years with the legislature and through the rulemaking process to obtain authority from the EPA to take on the renovation, repair, and painting rule for the state of Vermont. So this was a federal regulation from EPA that has requirements and regulations for renovation activities that disturb lead-based paint in pre-78 housing and childcare facilities. So we, after a lot of statutory changes and regulatory changes and support on October 1st, the state, so the department took over that authority from EPA to be the administrator of this rule in Vermont. And with that, EPA is providing additional federal funds to support adding a position to help implement this rule. With the approval from EPA, it was the understanding that Vermont would be at least as protective as the federal rule. And with that, adding a senior engineer position to help be a presence in the field to provide education and outreach and training to businesses and contractors about compliance with this rule and how to comply is a big need of the department, and that's what this request is for. We know that lead safe work practices really help reduce lead poisoning. We still work with over 400 children, about 400 children a year that are affected by lead poisoning. So we know it is very important to make sure that we're providing education and technical assistance to contractors to know how to remediate safely when lead paint is involved. We've already been fielding a lot of questions from the public and from the contracting community. So there's a strong need to add this personnel resource to help provide that education, and also the field component is important here. One of the primary duties of this position will be working directly in the field, evaluating compliance on renovation and permitting projects, and providing that direct assistance to businesses.
So with that, do I have any questions from this? Yes.
Two questions, thank you. It looks like the total is 951, 123. Am I looking at the right number?
That is for a couple of years. So the additional funding, this is a long-standing grant that the health department has with EPA. There was an additional 180,000 that the department will be getting that will help support the personnel resources.
And what happens to this position on October 1st of 2024 when the grant ends?
Yeah, we are hoping, since we've had a longstanding grant with the EPA, that funding will continue because the work will continue. But certainly we will keep the committee and others aware if the intention is expecting additional funding will be renewed in another 2 years.
They're delegating authority, they're giving funding for the state to execute that responsibility. And I would assume that as long as they want to delegate that authority, that they would provide the funding to support it.
Correct.
Okay, other questions that we might have? So what we have is a request to authorize the creation of a limited service position to the Department of Health. And other questions? Yes.
I was, in the absence of other questions, I was going to move this paper.
So we have a motion. So we have a motion. Senator Baruch moved to approve one limited service position in the Vermont Agency of Human Services Department of Health for a senior health asbestos and lead engineer under a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. And we have a second from,
Oh, go ahead.
Senator Sears.
Well, thank you,
Senator Sears has seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Harrison, yes. Representative Lanford,
Yes.
Representative Shy,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
yes,
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
Senator Kornheiser,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
0.
So motion has passed. Thank you. The grant, the position has been, request has been approved. So
Thank you very much.
So our next item on our agenda is the timing of our next meeting.
And I might just
We'll
like,
adjourn after that.
yes, what I thought I might just mention is typically your next meeting would be late July, when the e-board meets and when you adopt the revenue forecast, the e-board meets, adopts the revenue forecast, and that's typically when the next meeting would be. I don't know that we need to pick the date today, but what I might do is have Erin, and I should just introduce Erin specifically, who's in the corner. Erin will be staffing the joint fiscal committee. You've got an emails from her for this one. And so she will be organizing.
She's a
the
new
dates.
Teresa, for those of us in the Senate.
Ah.
Yes.
Who's Teresa?
She's in the clerk's office.
Clerk's office. Okay.
you want to come over and visit us sometime.
We're right down the hall.
Well, and we're thrilled to have Erin working on this and, but, so I don't know that we need to, we would typically pick the next date, but I think what we'll do is we'll have Erin connect with you all when we get.
And sometimes we try to do e-board in the afternoon and joint fiscal in the morning so that we're consolidated. For some of us, the travel. So I guess what we're saying is our next meeting will probably be in July, but the specific day is yet to be determined. Right? If there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Okay, so Senator Cummings has moved to adjourn. I don't think we really need to vote that. So I'm going to exercise my authority here at the end of the day without